Sometimes chasing happiness feels as impossible as trying to catch your youth group leader while he's shirtless and covered in baby oil, and yes, that was a real game they had us play at church camp. The early 2000s was a different time. But anyway, we probably try too hard to chase every aspect of a happy life all at once instead of chasing one attribute that's attainable at a time. And one of those things that's made the biggest difference in my life would be look for the best in people and situations. And I know that sounds super common sense and it's easier said than done, but your brain is literally a muscle and you can train it to do what you want or stop doing what you don't want. And I'm thinking of an everyday situation like I just had happen a few months ago. I texted a friend about something and I can't even remember exactly what they responded, but it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And my first instinct was to think, are they being passive aggressive? And to get kind of offended. But then I stopped myself and thought, maybe they're just using some ironic humor that didn't land for me or something. Like, why take the least generous approach and interpretation when you could take the most generous one? Not in a naive way, but most people aren't trying to hurt you with their words, which, side note, but another great rule for life is don't have important conversations over text, because if someone would have told me that at age 16, it would have changed so much. Just meet up in person or have a phone call, but yeah, you're just bound to have some big misunderstandings over text. Which, if you have any other simple rules for life that have made you a lot happier, feel free to share them below in the comments. I always love some good practical advice. Or another example for me, just a week ago, I ran into an old friend at a coffee shop and he just seemed totally uninterested in talking to me. Every question I asked, he'd give a one-word answer, and he didn't ask me any questions, and I could have walked away thinking 1,000 things about how he must not like me or something, but instead I just walked away and thought, well, he was on his computer, maybe I was interrupting something. I know for me it can be hard for me to switch gears when you're into something and then you have to transition into an unexpected conversation, who knows. So you can train your brain to not think negatively and judgmentally, but you can also train your brain to think positively and generously. Like, I had this group of guy friends years ago, and we'd do this thing called reverse gossip, where we'd start talking about a person who wasn't there, and instead of tearing them down, we'd just hype them up and be like, man, Brian is just the coolest. And someone else would pipe up and be like, yeah, he's always looking for a way to help. And someone else is like, did you hear you went and sat with that weird kid at lunch the other day? And we'd be like, yeah. And it was something we were doing sincerely, but also in a kind of funny way. Like, let's see how much we can hype up this dude. And there's a great excerpt from a book by Sundar Singh, who was an Indian mystic, that I'm going to seriously paraphrase, but this has always stuck with me over the years. And he wrote, if a bad rumor about someone goes around, even if it isn't true, a guy whose perspective is warped will instantly accept it as true. On the other hand, if good news about someone goes around, for example, that so-and-so's a great dude who did this or that wonderful thing for the community, then without hesitation, a guy that has a warped perspective will say, nah, like, it's all fake. So-and-so's got to have some motive behind it all. And if we were to ask this guy how he knows that the bad rumor is true and the good news is fake, he won't have any evidence. And this just goes to show that those with a bad mind gravitate towards bad news because it fits in with their bad hearts. But on the flip side, a good guy's attitude is the opposite. He's naturally inclined to doubt a bad rumor and to believe good news because that fits in with his good mind and good heart, and paraphrase. So the more you teach yourself to do this, the more your mind will naturally do it, and it's just a snowball effect. Like, I'm an extremely judgmental person by nature, mostly of ideas, not as much of people. I can do that somehow and separate it, but it's easy for the line to get blurred, and over time I've really trained my brain to just catch every negative thought or negative feeling when you have that negative cloud come over you, and just stop, take a breath, and take the most generous interpretation to what you just experienced. This person said something that hurt me. Well, they probably had no intention of doing that, and I very well may have misunderstood them. Or maybe I know for a fact that the person said something to hurt me, but I know that they grew up with a dad who was mean as a snake, so they're probably doing the best they can with the hand they were dealt, and they probably went home and felt bad for what they said to me. You never know. You just don't want to assume the worst about people and their actions, because We all have that one paranoid friend who thinks the world is out to get them and just makes everything about them and plays the victim in every scenario, and no one wants to be around that person, so don't be that person. I have a complicated relationship with religion, join the club, but there's this verse in the Psalms that always stuck with me that says, "Great peace have all those who love God's law, and nothing will offend them." We can just substitute those who love God's law with those who love love. Like, if you're a loving person, you won't be offended by the things people say or do, because you know we're all in this together, and that most people are fundamentally good, and that all things end up working out if you give them time and compassion and communication. Like, this older fella I used to work with once told me that you're only offended by a rumor or something about yourself if you know there's some truth to it. Like, if you know it isn't true, you won't be offended. You only get offended because deep down you know maybe they're a little right. And the more you focus on fixing your own problems instead of fixating on how other people should fix their problems, the happier you're going to be. And it really is an exponential curve where eventually you won't even be able to judge people, and the only thing you can see in every situation and every given person is the positive. By the way, I'm Andrew. This is my co-host, Oakley, and we are currently accepting donations in the form of subscribes or yellow tennis balls. And if you don't subscribe for me, at least do it for Oakley. Here's a slideshow of him as a reward for making it to the end of the video.